dusty 28th Street in Sunflower Creek baked under the relentless August sun. Its cracked blacktop radiated heat, making the air shimmer in a wavy haze. Sergeant Martinez, who had been watching Miss Chesser's house for a week, had set up a comfortable spot in the attic of the house across the street. He was bored. In half an hour, Sergeant Phillips was supposed to take over his shift. Suddenly, he saw a red-headed woman appear in Miss Chesser's backyard. Taking a closer look, Martinez recognized her. It was Catherine Vanderbilt, the same woman who had already come here before in a red Packard. The woman paused for a moment at the back entrance and then disappeared into the mansion. The nearest phone was 2 blocks away, so Martinez decided to follow her. There was no way he was going to miss the chance to make a name for himself across the precinct. Slipping quietly into the house, Sergeant Martinez listened carefully. He could hear some noise coming from the second-floor sitting room. Peeking through the slightly open door, Martinez saw Miss Vanderbilt trying to unlock a drawer in a large writing desk with a hefty bunch of keys. He pushed the door open and stepped into the room. "Excuse me, ma'am, but all the papers from the desk, the safe, and the cabinet have already been confiscated by the police. And I'm afraid you'll have to come with me to the station," Martinez said, blocking the exit with his body. Miss Vanderbilt flinched in surprise and, sighing, placed a hand over her heart. "Oh, you startled me," she said, leaning back in the chair and closing her eyes for a moment. "She's beautiful," Martinez thought as he studied his captive. "Of course, I'll go with you and explain everything. I shouldn't have come here on my own. Please forgive me," Miss Vanderbilt said, her face full of regret and submission. After appreciating the woman's slim figure, the sergeant offered her to step outside and nodded toward the door. "Just a minute. Would you mind pouring me a glass of water? I still haven't recovered from the shock." Miss Vanderbilt looked at Martinez with a pitiful expression. The sergeant poured water from the pitcher, stepped closer, and, without taking his eyes off his target, handed her the glass. He had already heard plenty about her cunning and deceit. Martinez had no intention of letting a promotion slip through his fingers. "Thank you," Catherine smiled, childlike and innocent. Martinez embarrassed and turned away to set the pitcher back in place. At that moment, a powerful blow from the crystal vase on the table crashed down onto his head. When the sergeant finally managed to open his eyes, the room was empty. A pair of shoes lay near the open window. Catherine Vanderbilt had jumped out onto the flower bed and was now sprinting barefoot toward the gate. She yanked it open and dashed forward, only to slam into something big and soft. It was Sergeant Phillips. He had come to relieve Martinez but hadn't found him, so he lingered by the gate, waiting. A minute later, he had Miss Catherine Vanderbilt in his arms, the woman the entire city police force had been searching for all week. Through the open mansion window, he spotted Martinez standing there with a dumbfounded look, inexplicably pressing the pitcher to his head. "Hey, slacker, watch and learn from the pros," Phillips said, clearly proud of himself. Evening settled over the city. The cuffs clicked shut around Miss Vanderbilt's delicate wrists. The shadows grew longer and lazy clouds thickened on the horizon. They signaled the long-awaited evening breeze and a much-needed break from the scorching heat. On a country highway stretching through the green meadows of Sunflower Creek, sinking into twilight, an old patrol Plymouth groaned and roared. Tonight was special for William Cross. He was racing toward Evelyn, pushing the worn-out car to its limits. Eyes locked on the winding road ahead, William reflected on the case that had consumed his life these past few days. Edward Dorsey's photos have been sent out across the state. He won't get far. At a red light, William reached into his inner pocket, pulled out a small red velvet box, and flipped it open. Inside, a wedding ring with 3 tiny diamonds lay waiting. Cross looked at it with satisfaction, closed the box, and tucked it back into his pocket. Tonight he was going to propose. Evelyn Lambert had won his heart long ago. Cross pulled into his driveway. The moon cast a soft glow over the facade of his cozy cottage. Lights shone warmly through the windows. Sergeant Winslow's Ford Custom Deluxe sat motionless, but all 4 tires had been shot out. The front door was open, and the house was eerily silent. William drew his gun and stepped inside quietly. The first thing he saw was Robert Winslow, sprawled out and snoring like a steam engine in his chair. William slapped him a couple of times across the face, but the sergeant kept snoring. The house was empty. Next to the chair where Winslow was sprawled out, an unfinished glass of tea sat on the floor. It was clear that someone had spiked it with a sleeping aid. Cross called the police, requested a unit, and rushed outside. Within a minute, he was speeding toward Evelyn's house. As he approached, he saw lights on in her windows. Parking his car at a distance, he carefully climbed over the fence and crept up to the window. Peering inside, Cross saw Evelyn sitting in a chair. Standing next to her was Edward Dorsey. He was anxiously rummaging through a cabinet, tossing papers onto the floor. A gun was in his hand. William quietly entered the house and sneaked toward the room where Evelyn was sitting. With a single leap, he burst into the room, positioning himself between Dorsey and Evelyn, shielding her with his body. Caught off guard, Dorsey dropped the papers, but he didn't have time to raise his gun. Cross fired twice, hitting him in the arm. Dorsey collapsed onto the floor, groaning in pain. "Are you okay?" William asked Evelyn without turning to face her, keeping his gun trained on Dorsey. "I'm fine," Evelyn said. "Cuff yourself to the radiator," Cross ordered, tossing a pair of handcuffs to Dorsey with one hand while keeping his gun steady in the other. Dorsey obediently crawled to the radiator and locked himself to it. "Evelyn, do you have a phone in the house?" William asked, but suddenly froze. In the box Dorsey had been rummaging through, Cross spotted a framed photograph. It showed a cheerful young woman sitting on a swing, smiling. On her slender legs were elegant shoes with slanted straps and a small golden buckle shaped like a rose. It was Evelyn Lambert. "Evelyn?" William slowly turned, his eyes searching hers for answers. Evelyn stood there, aiming a gun straight at his chest. Her eyes were cold. "I am Vivienne," Evelyn said, and pulled the trigger. A gunshot rang out. William Cross staggered unsteadily before crashing to the floor. A small red velvet box slipped from his pocket, and a gold wedding ring with 3 tiny diamonds rolled across the floor.